It is exciting, getting ready for the big 4th of July parade here in beautiful Fredericksburg, Texas. This has become burning with the rebound.
Everyone, welcome to the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce.
Please on time here, 3,500. So they go to your dad.
And we hear that promise again in John's Gospel.
We love living in the country.
When I think about
Husband.
Along the fairways at Lady Bird have a way of slowing time.
Hey there, well, welcome, Billy fans. This is
on September 25th, 1925.
John
when she sank
Crawford Fritch.
is Esther Schneider, and I am the incoming president of the Republican Club here in Fredericksburg. And I'd like to give a special shout out to George Studer, who is going on a 6-week trip to Europe. He's our past president, and he's going to put a memorial in place at one of the landing beaches. So thank you, George, for doing that. I would also like to have our other executive committee people stand up. Teresa Wyrick, Bill Studer, or what am I saying? Bill Briggs. Bill Briggs is in the back. And Bruce Campbell, where are you? Okay. And I don't see Jerry Farley yet, but they make up our executive committee for the club. Next, I would like to thank Russell and Donna for hosting us again. Come on, stand up. They have been very gracious in hosting all the candidates for the forums, and especially in the sheriff's races, and we are greatly appreciative of them doing that for us. It's a great opportunity to get to see the place if you haven't been in here before, and we encourage you to visit the bar since they're not charging us to use their facility. So, and if you haven't gotten any food, please get in the back and get a plate. So, all right, I'd like to call Karen Young up to do the prayer for us this evening, and I would like you all to keep the Young family in your prayers. So, Karen, come on up.
Let's come before God in prayer. We thank you for all that you have given us and the many blessings in our lives. We ask for your strength and guidance. Show us the way and fill us with courage and wisdom. Help us to remember your love and grace and to be faithful in our service to you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right, now we'll do the pledge, and I would like to ask our two candidates. The flag is up here behind you. If you would lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas pledge. Oh, we don't have do we have a Texas flag? Oh, that's okay. Can you do it fast?
I can make it do it fast. I'm not the brightest everyone, but I'm good.
Okay.
Hold on. Sorry about that, everybody. It's coming. Come on, thing. It's getting there. It's getting there. Hold on. Voila.
Okay. Woo-hoo. All right, ready? I pledge to thee, Texas. Come on, people. Honor the Texas flag. Sorry. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Yee Haw! Sorry about that. All right, let me make sure I'm not missing anything here. All right, let's kind of go through some ground rules for tonight. We have a lot of people that want to ask a lot of questions, and we are grateful again for Buddy Mills and Chris Ayala for joining us this evening. The election is on the 28th. Early voting starts next week, and we hope that you'll ask those questions and get them answered. We're asking the first time around 1 question per person, so everybody has an opportunity. Once everybody has asked their first question, then please proceed to ask another question. The candidates will have approximately 90 seconds to answer, and I'm going to keep them on track. If I think that they didn't answer the question, we will redirect it. Anybody have any other questions? And we're going to ask you to step to the microphone, so there'll be no printed questions or anything like that, but please come to the microphone, okay? All right, I'm going to let the candidates have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and talk about why they're running. Mr. Ayala, would you like to go first?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for showing up this evening. We really appreciate it, and all those that are watching back home. One of the things I want to say is I've been in Fredericksburg for 25 years, and I've been very blessed to be here. I'm married to a young lady from Fredericksburg, Texas, my wife, and I am raising 3 sons currently here in Fredericksburg. We live in the Cherry Springs area, and I moved here in 1999 and became extremely involved with the community. I pretty much can tell you, I moved here in 1999 and became extremely involved with the community and haven't quit yet. I do not work here currently in the county of Gillespie. I'm working for the Kendall County Sheriff's Department, but I still do church trainings for active shooter to make sure that our churches and our congregations are safe here in Gillespie County. And I've been doing that for quite a while. So the community service for me will not end irregardless of how this outcome goes. I will still be a very big part of Gillespie County. Gillespie County is in my heart. I hope to retire here at some point, living in Gillespie County. I hope to continue to serve the community until I'm no longer able to physically, or I win the lottery. That's an option. So my heart is always going to be here in Gillespie County. I've been very blessed with the family that I am currently involved with, that I've been allowed to raise my sons with here. One of the reasons why I'm running for sheriff is that this county and this area has been very good to me. And for me, running for sheriff is not about what is for me, it's what I can give and what I can do for the county of Gillespie, given of myself. I was raised by a public servant that was an insurance salesman, and my mom was a nurse, and I used to believe that my dad was very into the community, and so if you were to see or meet my dad, rest his soul, he would say, I see where Chris gets it from. So community service and public service is truly a servant's heart. It's truly a gratitude to my Lord and Savior that he gives me the skills and the ability to talk properly and the ability to be standing up in front of you. That's why I want to be your next Gillespie County Sheriff. If you cast your votes, I would love to have all of your support. And please, I'll be glad to share my number. If you ever have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to give me a call. But I love this community, and I would hope that you vote for me for the love of this community. I appreciate you.
Sheriff Mills?
Good evening. Whoa, I'm sorry about that. Good evening. For those of y'all who have never met me or don't know anything about me, I moved to Gillespie County around 32 years ago when I transferred up here with my family as a state game warden. And so I worked here in Gillespie County until 2007 when I retired to run for sheriff, and actually became the sheriff here in the county over 15 years ago. We've actively been serving each and every one of y'all here in the county, all the citizens that travel to this county, anyone that comes here. I've actively been serving them, running the sheriff's office and making sure that it provides the service and the necessary protection that you as citizens deserve. There's a lot of people that come to this county. About 1.3 million people annually visit here. There's about 27,500 people that actually live here. It encompasses 1,062 square miles. And I currently have 62 paid positions within the sheriff's office, and I manage about an $8.6 million budget annually, all on behalf of y'all. And I do that very frugally to make sure that I do not spend money where it is not needed to be spent. My roots go way back here in Texas, born and raised outside of San Antonio. Went to a little school called John Marshall outside of Helotes, and have enjoyed every day working here for you. As a public servant and a state peace officer for over 43 years, I bring a tremendous amount of value, knowledge, and skills in performing as your sheriff here in Gillespie County. Thank you all, and I'm looking forward to this election coming up, and I'm humbly asking for each and every one of you to consider voting for me, your sheriff, Buddy Mills, in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Okay, Donna is going to bring the mic around, and we would ask you to please ask a question, not pontificate a story, just for the brevity of time, okay? April, yeah.
Hold the microphone up to your mouth. If you do this, we can't hear you.
As the chief law enforcement officer in the county, tell us your understanding of the sheriff's constitutional authority with regard to federal and state agency agents who want to come into Gillespie County to contact legal residents. What is your policy to ensure those agents are on notice for what is required before they can step into the county to do their business, and what will be required during the time they are in the county? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to answer that one. And I want to make sure, April, that I heard that part right where you were talking about illegal. Did you say illegals in the county?
Illegal residents, like if a federal or state agent comes in to contact a legal resident here.
Oh, okay. Well, I took an oath, like every peace officer does, in order to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of this state and the laws that pertain to them. As far as working with other agencies, be it local, state, nationally, or federally, I have always strived to do that because we work together and we stand side by side with each other when we are actually working. So as far as them coming into the county, and I believe that came up here on the last debate on a little incident that happened here when I was not around. And on that one, there was actually some deals that were done that was not quite right, but so I corrected that. And I made it to where anytime any kind of outside agency comes here, out of due respect to the sheriff, which they always do, they make it a point to stop by the office if they have any kind of business here within the county. So constitutionally, I uphold everyone's lawful rights and the Constitution as it is written.
Okay.
Okay, for me, the Constitution is the groundwork. It is where we get everything that we do as a country. It is the solid groundwork as the U.S. Constitution is. That's what's given us the supreme law. Legislators, executive branch, they must make sure that they're making the rules and the laws of this land that are abided by the U.S. Constitution. Each state has the ability to then make their own decisions. Under the 10th Amendment, they can create laws that they can do. For some instance, some states are allowed to do certain things and some states do not. That's a state decision. On a local level, we're also allowed as a sheriff to create and make sure that we guideline as a county our own laws. And it's done that way so that there's the legislation and the executive branches, they're guided by the Constitution, and the Supreme Court must also make their rulings based on the Constitution. Not their personal feelings, not their ideals or thoughts. It must be based on how the Constitution is written. So the other thing is when it comes to allowing the other federal agencies into this county, under case law, we are allowed as a sheriff to say not in our county. We have the right to protect our citizens by simply saying, what is your reason here? Why are you here? You can go on and on and on and look at the history of our country where the federal government has come in and things have not gone that well, and then the local agencies are left to try to clean up the mess. So I'll give you one example, the Waco situation. That was a bad idea. It created a bad scenario, and it ended very badly. Lots of people lost their lives when they could have easily de-escalated, backed out, getting something done differently, working with the local authorities saying, hey, this is who we're looking, this is what we're doing. How can you assist us in that? It has to work as a teamwork. There has to be a sense of respect for the federal government, and then the federal government has to respect the local authorities.
So we've had a special request from the cameraman that we need you both to hold the mic closer to your face so it will pick up your voices. Thank you. Okay, next question.
Hi, this question is for you, Mr. Ayala. I've had the great pleasure of now attending the 5th debate that I've heard you both in. And I've learned a lot about each of you and your stance. One of the things that has not been really discussed before is your particular record as a school resource officer. What did your day look like? And were you actually making any arrests of kids that might have been caught with drugs? Did you try to investigate further their dealers, and were you able to arrest anybody there? So I would like to hear some of your personal record. As I understand, the majority of your career has been in a school as a school resource officer.
Absolutely. So one of the things about being a school resource officer, there's what we call an Fbg.Live, which means security, that's a law enforcement assigned to a campus. An SRO is someone who goes in that campus and he works with the youth. A lot of people do not realize that not only was I in that campus, I'm a certified teacher. I actually educated students on criminal justice. There are over 75 students in our state that currently went through that program and have said to me, I led that path because of what you taught me in that classroom, Ayala. Yes, I did file charges. I had students that were charged with offenses. Now, what I want you to understand is people have said, well, what was in my desk and all that kind of stuff. For a while there, the state of Texas was no longer receiving our dab pens or vape pens or THC pens because they could not determine whether they were legal pens or whether they were illegal. If you have time, I would encourage you to go to the local gas stations and see what a THC vape pen looks like that you can purchase legally like a cigarette package over at the school. And I don't agree with it, let me tell you. And not only that, working on that school campus, they look like pens. Some of them look like highlighters, and now they make them look like the stick highlighters. So realistically, for me to find it required me knowing the trust of the students to trust me to tell me. So for a period there, the state of Texas was no longer taking these things. And for a period there, our county attorney and our district attorney, after a big meeting, said, we are not taking these things until you can prove that. So if you look at the charges that I filed, they were still in the package that had the percentage of the THC in it. Then I could prove that this was prohibited or it was bought over the counter. So the other thing is if you look at my track record, the state of Texas, if you don't believe me, there's an organization called the Appleseed Program out of Austin. They don't believe police should be on the campus at all, zero zilch. They believe that kids get arrested or get a citation in school, they develop a pipeline to prison. Don't believe that. The other thing is that when you talk about working with youth and you're educating them, the most important thing is you have to realize there are people in this room that have been arrested and they've gone on to do great things. There are people that I've charged in offenses and have gone on to do great things. So I'm not saying that there aren't times that I didn't charge, but the school took care of the discipline. There are times that I charged and I felt very bad about it, but I did what I had to do. So I encourage you, like I said before, you can pull my records. You can see how many arrests I made. Towards the end, in the time in question, don't look for my name under the arrest because we had an officer that was assigned with me that was currently coming out of the drug interdiction unit. He asked me, can I handle all the drug stuff that goes? Absolutely. So what I would do is if I was the first one involved, I would get a phone and said, hey, I got a case for you. I got gummies. I got a THC pen. He would then take over the case. He was very good at putting in the evidence and so forth. So there's a lot more to that. I'm giving you a quick answer, but here's what I want you to understand. When I talked about the legislation earlier, they took away my power to write a Class C citation in a school system. They took that power away from me as a police officer. They made it to where schools had to create a 3-step process that would then allow them to be processed 3 times. If they were caught 3 times, then the school would have to file the complaint, not the police officer. As a courtesy, we would deliver those to the courthouse, but we were not allowed to officially give them an actual citation. That's across the state of Texas. When they did that, they took away my authority and power to they circumvented me saying, hey, you got cigarettes. Hey, you got a THC pen that's technically a cigarette. So I would love for you to research that, but I'm going to say one thing here. What I did in that high school was not just teach, it was not just arrest, it was not just throw people in jail. It was making a connection to where they gave me information that helped solve a lot of public crimes. And not only that, I can tell you right now, and you can do your homework, I'd be glad to sit down with you, how many active shooters we prevented that would have attacked our school because of the interaction in that classroom, because of the interaction in the hallways. And those kids will tell you that every time I was in the hallway, I never let them get past me without saying, hey, smile, you need to smile, look up. And if they were sitting quietly, I would find a way to contact them. I would challenge anyone to sit down and work with an SRO for 1 year, and then y'all please come have a discussion with me. Thank you.
Next question.
should the FBI want to come into our county to contact and arrest someone they say was in D.C. on January 6th, how are you going to handle that, and how will you interpose if necessary?
Karen, which candidate? Do you want both to answer the question? Both? Okay.
Well, first of all, what I've said, that if I'm elected sheriff, my goal is to listen. My goal is to learn. My goal is to then take that information and what I'm listening to, learn as much as I can. And I got to be honest with you, the constitutional term, the constitutional sheriff, is a very hot topic. I don't know if you know that or not, but you really need to look into it. If you're not familiar with it, sit down, take the time to learn it. One of the things that I look at is that there are people out there, because of the January 6th situation, that have warrants for them. I'm not saying that I would not respond to that warrant. I'm not saying that I would not execute that warrant, but I would definitely make sure I had my understanding of what that warrant is for. I do not want to treat someone like they're a hardened criminal if it's strictly for being on a place where they should be, like disorderly conduct or criminal trespass. All I'm saying is that I think that if we're going to make concessions to call certain people and say, hey, they're looking for you, then we need to do that across the board. We need to work with that. I would definitely make sure that before we said, hey, this person's going with you, that we make sure that they are protected under due process of the law, which is found in the Fifth Amendment, that make sure that every person that is treated by law enforcement, before they bring that body to me as a sheriff, the due process of a warrant has been met. And we got to make sure that we take care of our citizens. It doesn't mean I'm going to let you go. It does mean that I'm going to make sure you have crossed all the T's, dotted your I's. Most importantly, it would be my duty as a sheriff to make contact with all those agencies and say, this is what we expect of you in our county. If you don't agree with that, then we're going to have conflict. I would prefer that we work together, because we need to look at our citizens and give them the most protection that we can. It doesn't mean we're always going to give you as a citizens what you want, but we are definitely going to make sure that you're protected.
Thank you for this question, because that is something that just occurred here the other day. So I can give you the exact story and the rest of the story of exactly what transpired that day. There was actually a deputy that was out patrolling and ran across an individual that failed to use their turn signal. And upon doing that, ran the license plate on the vehicle. And during our CAD system, there's a CAD system, computer-aided dispatch inside the vehicle that will tell you what's going on. Well, he ran the plate in there, and it popped up that this person actually had a warrant out of San Antonio, an out-of-county warrant. So the officer was able to get around the other traffic and get up close to the vehicle again, and then make sure that he did read the plate, make sure that that was the individual in question, and lo and behold, it was. An individual that had a warrant out of San Antonio, an out-of-county warrant. The individual was arrested, placed in the Gillespie County Jail for the warrant, because it's an out-of-county warrant. And then the very next day, the FBI from San Antonio was here to execute and take that person, because it was a no bail, no bond warrant, which means there was no ifs, ands, or buts. It was what it was. It was an out-of-county warrant that was issued, executed here in the county, and the individual, I don't know exactly what happened to him. That's not my case. That's not my business. All we did was serve the warrant like we do across this county from all over the nation. We've arrested people from Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, anywhere you can think of that have outstanding warrants. It is not our job here at the Sheriff's Office to dictate or mandate whatever the results are of that warrant. That warrant was issued by a legitimate agency for a person's arrest, and all we did was facilitate the apprehension and the removal of that person. That's it, plain and simple.
Donna?
Let him get the mic.
Donna, Laura would like to ask a question.
So my question for you, Buddy, is why did it take 3 sheriff's vehicles to pull over a 72-year-old woman? If, as you described, your sheriff came up alongside the vehicle, made sure, so he could see he was looking at a 72-year-old woman. So what's just missing from your story is I'm just not sure I understand, if the sheriff called for backup or what exactly happened. But so if you could please explain that. In addition, do you not get a notification in the CAT system and in your other systems when there is a warrant out for someone's arrest? And is that not the case? Because as I understand it, as sheriff, you might be notified, you should be aware in advance, right, that there's a warrant out for somebody who is a resident of your county. So that's the second question. And then the third question is just that, so when that woman's son was at your office pleading with you not to hand her over to the to the feds, basically, you looked in your computer and said that they were already on their way and there was nothing that you could do, as I understand it, according to her son-in-law. So I'm just trying to understand, I understand this are legitimate agencies and legitimate warrants, but we just talked about the importance of a constitutional sheriff. And this woman was charged with 4 misdemeanors. I've pulled the arrest documents from the PACER system, which is the government system. I've seen those records myself. And having worked on January 6 cases for the last 4 years, I know what all those misdemeanor charges are about. The disorderly and disruptive conduct, the criminal trespass. They're all about if you were on the grounds and walked through the building that day. She was not charged with assault. She was not charged with any violent crime. She was not charged with any felonies. And she was exercising her constitutional rights. So it seems like this is a perfect example because, as I understand, there are more January 6 arrests taking place every single day right now than in the last 4 years. There's 2 to 3 new arrests every single day. The people are getting older and older. You know, really they're going after elderly people and putting them in prison for misdemeanor offenses. And as a constitutional sheriff, it seems that it's your responsibility to stand up for the Constitution. And I wonder if you did not have the authority to keep that person behind bars, but keep them in the county since they were a resident. Do you not, as the sheriff, since you have jurisdiction, can you not say to the feds, and I really want to understand here, because right now they're coming for people for January 6th. You know, in the next few months, they could be coming for people who voted for Donald Trump or who gave money for Donald Trump. That's the reality of what we're talking about. And I know I speak on behalf of a lot of people here in this county when we say we want somebody in that office that is going to stand up to the misuse and the abuse of power by federal agencies. So I like your part about we like to work together. That's great. We want you to work together. Nobody's saying be unhelpful. But we also want to know that you're going to stand up for the Constitution and stand up for our constitutional rights, and you're going to use the power afforded to you by the law.
I will say that that was a very long question there at the end, but I'm going to address the 3 questions that you asked me, and I'm not going to go into great details. You might have to come back and ask me another question, okay? All right, the first one was about the 3 officers. Oh, wait. Let me back up just a second. You've got all of this information that you have gleaned off of this person, so you know all of this information? You know that the person was 72 years old and all this other kind of stuff? Okay.
I spent several hours with her. She was upset. She was actually lying down. She was in the other room.
Oh, okay. First of all, she's 69 years old. The reason for 3 officers showing up is it was just a routine traffic stop. The traffic stop came out. There was a warrant for this person. And sometimes our officers are close to each other. And if you have not noticed, usually when they stop somebody, usually there's a couple of other vehicles that show up. So the fact that there was 3 of them officers there is really mute. That's not a very good point. There could be 1, there could be 5, there could be a bunch of them, but there may have been 3 of them there that rolled up on the scene. Notice of warrants in the county. The only notice that we have of warrants in the county are the outstanding ones that we currently have here. We have no earthly idea about any other county warrants or out-of-county warrants that are issued until we actually stop an individual for an offense. Once we stop them for an offense, like this one here, not using their turn signal, run the plate, find out they have a warrant, then we know they have a warrant. So nobody sends me any kind of notices or sends the sheriff's office any kind of notices of outstanding warrants within our community. So we don't know that until we stop them. That's just the way it is. If you don't have your front license plate, probable cause for a stop, they may stop you, run your license plate or your driver's license and find out that you have a warrant out of Houston or wherever, and we'll proceed with that kind of case. The guy, you're talking about the guy, the young individual that came there. As a matter of fact, I was actually in the office visiting with that gentleman. Hey, he just wanted to know, ask me some questions about his mom or mother-in-law being arrested, and I just said, hey, I don't really know anything. I haven't found anything out. I just got into the office. And he said, well, I'm really worried about her truck. That was the one thing that stuck out in my mind the most. So I thought, well, I'm going to walk back to the back and find out exactly what happened. Was I walked back to the jail area there. The agents were already here. They were already there executing their warrant and removing the individual from our county. Period. It was a no bond, no bail warrant. So if you want me to make exceptions for people, then I'm in the wrong business, because I'm actually a law enforcement officer, and that's what I do for a living, is enforcing the laws. If you violate the laws, then we will apprehend you and we will send you to the courts and they will prosecute you. That's what a law enforcement officer does, and that's what a law enforcement agency does. And in order to have people that respect the law and to do what they're supposed to do and not mess up, because if you got to remember, we didn't do anything wrong. The individual that got arrested evidently did something wrong, and it wasn't anywhere around here, and it wasn't any of our business other than to execute the warrant. That's what the court system is for. You've got to, wait a minute, please let me answer. You have to realize that law enforcement officers apprehend people, build cases against them, present it to the grand jury, or present it to the county court, or present it to the local JP, and it moves forward in the court system. We have no way to regulate what happens after we conduct our law enforcement arrest or apprehension. That's it, period. The judicial system takes care of it on that side.
So you could not have kept her at your jail. You had to hand her over.
I can't hear her.
Donna, will you give her, what she just said, Sheriff, was that she's asking the question, could you have not kept her and be in violation of the warrant?
I was not going to keep somebody.
Why is that in violation of the warrant? That was not my question. My question was, do you not have the legal authority to continue to detain her, but you don't have to hand her over to the feds? Because otherwise, if you say that you don't have that authority, which is at odds with the law that I looked up today, then it means that none of us are protected. Then it means that any agency that comes in here, you're going to hand us over. And that's all I want to be clear on. And when you know, if you have a warrant, you can stay in this jail, right? It doesn't, yes.
No.
And I would like Chris to answer that too. Yeah. Well, you can answer about that. So.
No, ma'am, just a second. What we do on people when we have them here, we hang on to them till the agency can arrive, and then we turn them over to the agency that actually possesses the warrant for the individual. We do not keep them here in our county for extended period of time.
Okay, hold on, Laura.
The DEA has warrants on local people. The local sheriff says, you're not taking them. I'll keep them in my jail. It happens all the time. In blue cities, when they go into ICE goes in to arrest illegal immigrants, what happens? They say, no, you're not taking them. It happens every day in America, but not in Fredericksburg, Texas.
Okay, we need to keep a little decorum here, okay? Laura, okay, we need to move on to the next question. Hold on, let's move on to the next question.
We have another question over here.
Okay, Laura, we'll come back to it, okay?
Chris, this question's for you. If you had a federal agency contact you to advise you that you had a person in your county that has a federal warrant, say pertaining to this situation, would you pass that information down the line to have guys post up to try to intercept and make contact with that person to initiate that warrant?
So I go back to the fact that if you know your people and you know your community, I'm going to sit here and say that we know there was a lot of people there on January 6th that are from Fredericksburg. It doesn't mean that they're hardened criminals. It doesn't mean anything. So if that information was to come to me, I feel like as a sheriff, I would have that connection, that community connection, to pick up the phone and call that individual and have them turn themselves in, have them get their things in order, because it is a stressful thing. Even at 69, and I'm not sitting here calling anybody old at 69, please don't think that for a second, but to be arrested is probably, to be even pulled over by a police officer is an extremely stressful situation. But to be arrested by a police officer is also a highly stressful situation. I think as a sheriff, I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of it goes to leadership. I would say this, if I was a sheriff, I would say, look guys, if you get a federal warrant of any form, I want to be notified as the sheriff. Wake me up. If I'm not home, I'm not available, then get a hold of the chief deputy. But we would have a pre-understanding of how we would handle those kind of situations. The reason being is because the final decision should be made by the sheriff on what happens with that individual. I do not want to see an officer be put in a bind and get sued or get treated in a certain way because they made a decision. The support needs to come from the top all the way down to the bottom. But that information, so even if I say right now, I don't know if a warrant's coming, I should have already set a policy in play or a system in play, because I'm going to say this county has experienced the ATF coming in, and the sheriff said in a previous debate that he has taken care of it. They have a process now. It's going to work a certain way. Now I'm going to say this, misinformation is the worst thing. So I cannot speak on exactly what happened in this scenario. All I'm saying is if there was a second that they found out the FBI involved, I think the sheriff should have been notified, and the sheriff makes the final decision as to what should happen to that individual.
Okay, next question. Donna? Okay.
This is for both of you. Regarding the January 6th arrests, it's very obvious that the Biden dictatorship is misusing the court system to attack their political enemies. Are you saying you are not going to exercise any discernment of these political persecutions, but you're going to wash your hands and play along?
And this question you want directed to both of them. Mr. Ayala, would you like to go first?
Okay, so again, the warrants are there and they're issued. But again, I think it's important and imperative that we take a look at that warrant and find out how it's issued, who issued it, follow that chain to make sure that that is a properly issued warrant. Now, for me, the most important thing is, again, we have to take care of that citizen of this county. It doesn't mean that I may release them, but I'm going to make sure they're taken care of every step of the process. So, but to me, making sure that due process, the proper paper was signed, this is a legit warrant, that's extremely important. But again, once it comes to a point where all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, then I might have to actually execute that warrant. But I'm going to make sure that all of it is legit, that it's not for something that's frivolous. I think that it's important as a sheriff to learn as much as what's going on because of the January 6th information to make a better decision. I will say this, if given that opportunity to be your sheriff, that would be one thing that I would really investigate to find out exactly what's happening across the state. And I think that's when I think about as being a sheriff, it is a job that you learn as much as you can to implement as much as you know. And then the other thing is to surround yourself with smarter people that do that for a living. I would like to talk to attorneys and say, what are my options as a sheriff? Can I do this or can I not do this? What is my limit? But if you don't know that, you're just going to go with the old same routine. So I think there's a lot of learning to go on with this. But I still think in the end, how we treat those residents is the key point. That's just for me.
On the part of January 6th, whatever happened up there, like I said, I'm not privy to that. I wasn't there. I have no earthly idea what went on. I don't have any earthly idea about the circumstances of this individual's or any other individual's cases that may be coming down the pipe for those that were there. There may be others that this might occur and happen to. But I want you to know that if they show up with a warrant, just like if I show up and I have a warrant issued for somebody that has violated the law here in Gillespie County, and they are now in California, and they have committed a crime here in Gillespie County, I want them back. I want them to come here. I want them to serve their time and have the court system do whatever they're going to do with them. And we go pick them up across this state all the time. Remember, law enforcement. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know all the ins and outs about what happened up there. But I do want you to know that I take value in another agency issuing a well-documented warrant, which is signed by a magistrate and signed by a judge or signed by a federal judge. And I want you to know that those are the people that are really attorneys, and they know what they're doing, and all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. I can guarantee you that that's what occurs. I don't know of any frivolous warrants that have been issued on anyone. So if some other people may think that, some other people may feel that, but I want you to know, based on what we see and what we get, we execute those warrants accordingly, regardless of where they may be. We haven't had any in Hawaii, but I know some people want to go there and pick them up. But we will go pick up people all across this nation that have violated the law. We actually have secured them and retrieved them out of Mexico. Just recently, we had a case where a guy absconded, unfortunately had committed a horrendous murder here in Gillespie County, immediately fled to Mexico, and with the excellent assistance of both state, federal, DEA, FBI, everybody you could think of was working trying to hunt that gentleman down. It took us 5 years to find him. But we brought him back here, and the family received justice when he was convicted for her murder. So we'll hunt you down, and we're going to do that. If you don't mess up and you're a good citizen, regardless of what you do, you ain't got to worry about us. But if you mess up somewhere and you violate the law, then be rest assured that somebody might knock on your door one day because, unfortunately, we got a warrant for your arrest. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what law enforcement is. That's what we do. That's what citizens in the county expect us to do. Unless you want us to make exceptions for other people, then when you start doing that, then you erode the law enforcement family and you erode the respect of laws throughout not only this county, this state, this nation, and the whole world. Thank you.
Chris, I heard you say at one of these things you wanted to be honest with us. I want to know why you left FHS and why you left the department. I don't think you were fired. You could have stayed if you wanted to, but let's explain what happened out there.
You got it. And I explained this the last time, so I will explain it again because I'm very proud of my decision and what I decided to do. If you, again, the current administration obtained or attempted or obtained, I don't know, my current, they filled out an open records request, which I encourage all of y'all to do as citizens because it can and you can do it, to find out what was in my record because I don't think they believed in that. I was given a retirement by Chief 4 Hour, in which I greatly appreciated that. And so the next thing I have to look at is I did something for 22 and a half years here in Fredericksburg. There are letters and letters and letters of thank yous and I owe you and I appreciate you. There are students, I've gone to more college graduations, I've been to more academy graduations. I have constantly stayed in contact with a lot of people. I have 3 sons in the school. So my goal was, and I've said it openly, that my goal was to watch my children get to their senior year, and on their senior year, I was going to flip a quarter and say, I stay as Officer Ayala, or I retire at that senior year, and I become Dad Ayala. So my goal was to work hard to prove to the agency that I belonged in that school at the high school, that I belonged in making the best decisions for the community. But unfortunately, I received an email that said I would no longer be teaching and that I was going to, they were going to help find my replacement. No discussion with me. Now, I'm not angry at all about it. I've made my peace. The Lord says love and let go, and that's what I did. But my problem is I left because for me, when you work hard and you give of yourself, and I'm not talking just that I showed up and clocked in, I showed up and gave of myself to those students beyond what I was required to do. And I'm not talking just one student, I'm not talking 2, I'm talking hundreds or thousands. hundreds or 1,000 students that I've given to myself. So to me, when you tell me without a conversation that why I'm not teaching and why I'm not doing what I'm doing, and now you want to move me down to the elementary without any discussion, my work in that school prevented a lot of problems. I solved a lot of crimes because of my work in that school. I made a lot of connections in that school. I taught 17 students my very first year in January of 2000. I still remain connected to all 17. You don't just get in that program. I'm going to tell you right now, if I had not taught, I would not understand the hell and the hard work that teachers endure on a daily basis. That's just the way I feel. Teachers earn their keep. Now, I was upset. I'm not going to lie. I felt like I was kicked in the gut. About a month later, because I stayed here for a little while and I thought I could make this work out, only at one point did someone say to me, without a discussion, said out loud, said, we had to pull Chris out of the classroom because he's a kid magnet. He would be teaching until the day he would die. That's what he loves doing, but we needed him out on the campus. What I wish someone would have said to me is, what is the value of you in that classroom? That's important to me because teaching those kids, building a relationship, they would come to me and tell me, I had pregnant girls come to me and say, Officer Ayala, I'm pregnant. I was like, uh-oh. But they would trust a man wearing a uniform, carrying a gun, and believed and had faith in him enough. That was my goal and that was my mission in that. So when you take that away from me, which I believe that I earned every right to stay, it's a kick in the gut. And so I felt like that was my cue to step away. I still have the highest respect for Chief Vorauer. No question in my mind that if I pull this off, he and I can sit down and we can make a better community. We can work together to put officers in our campuses to protect our students, and we can make this entire county the best county and be envious of other counties to look at us.
This is for both of you. Would you explain the Supremacy Clause and why it is so important that a sheriff understands it?
Okay, so when we look at our Constitution says these are the guidelines that we follow. Our founding fathers put this together, and I say this when I talk constitutional every September, if you don't know this, is U.S. Constitution Month, September. They make you teach that in school so that kids understand what their Constitution is. I learned the Constitution in high school, and I'm going to say this. It was designed for us to follow the words of our founding forefathers, but the key thing was it always goes back to the rights of the people, how we protect the people of the United States. No matter what you decide as a state, no matter what you decide as a country, no matter what you do, it has to understand the rights of the people. Our original document stated that the governments would be strong. And then they looked at it. Adam said, nope, we're doing this wrong. Something's not clicking. He said, wait a minute. He said, what would it be a powerful country if we said these words, we the people? So that's what it means when we say, you make a law, it needs to be in the benefit of the people. They get to decide. We make every avenue open for the people to be a part of that decision. The government can't just do what they want to do. And so we have to understand that the laws, the amendments that are in there, the Constitution, that all stands for the people. And we can never forget that, or we will become a tyrannical state and country.
Yes.
Okay, do we have another question?
That was for both of us. Yeah, that was for both of us. Yes, on the supremacy clause there, or supremacy rule, maybe as it's well known better, is the fact that, yes, the Constitution was written for each and every one of us, and each and every one of us abide by that, and that's the rules to keep everyone protected. And as we know, the federal government is the one. We all have the Constitution. We all abide by the Constitution. And you got to remember, though, the states also have a Constitution. Are you all aware of the Constitution of the state of Texas? There's a bunch of states that have their own constitutions, too. So there is a give and take within the Constitution of the United States and of those states. And so you have to remember that there is a working deal between the federal government and the states that they so hold within the United States. A great example of sometimes where the Constitution and the federal government does not work so well is a prime example of stuff that we've been seeing here recently, where our governor has had to take excessive means to go ahead and try to protect our state. So he's using each and everything that he can to try to adequately do that on our behalf to protect us, the citizens of this great state of Texas. So I want y'all to know that it is a working document. It's one that's lived for 250-something years. And I want you to know that it's something that I hold true and dear, the Constitution of this nation and of this state. That's the one that I took an oath to.
Thank you. This is for both of you, but in a little bit different context for each of you. Sheriff Mills, we've talked a lot about some of the things that were your philosophies on enforcement, but I'd like to understand what you see as the administrative roles of a sheriff and what the job description is and how you've executed that job description. And Mr. Ayala, I'd like to understand what kind of experiences you've had to be able to fulfill those responsibilities.
Yes, I'll be more than happy to go first. As being your sheriff for 15 years, I want you to know that it is a very difficult job. It's not an easy job, managing 62 employees and managing that large budget. But I want you, more importantly, that as a supervisor and administrator and a leader within an agency, you have to be able to empower the people that are working for you. You have to provide them the training. You have to provide them the equipment. You have to give them the knowledge. You have to give them the ability to do what they need to do. And then you do not micromanage them. You turn them loose to let them do the job that they need to do. They're all adults. They know what's going on. So that is one of the major things that I do on a daily basis, is to take care and empower the people that work for all of us here in Gillespie County, which is all the jailers, all of the deputies, all of the admin staff, everybody within that sheriff's office. I give them the opportunities to expand their knowledge, their skills, and their abilities to better serve each and every one of us. So an administrator's job is a difficult one. And I will tell you that I'm not going to make everybody happy as an administrator. I'm not going to make everybody happy in this room. That's just part of being in law enforcement. I will tell you that I will always respect and treat everybody honestly, fairly, and respectfully, which I have done for over 43 years as a law enforcement professional, because that's what I consider myself, as a professional. In doing that, it takes a lot of time to amass that knowledge. I was in this county, I set foot here 32 years ago. I always had an office in that sheriff's office. I was always in that building. I understand the intricacies of how that sheriff's office works. I understand the history, the knowledge, the rules that everybody uses here in Gillespie County when it comes to history. I want y'all to know that our Gillespie County Sheriff's Office is one of the most unique places, not only in this state, but in this nation. There are officers from other areas that get stopped out here, or they stop by the office and they go, I just had to come by here and see if it's really true. If it's really true that the game wardens, that the highway patrol, that the police chief, that the cattle ranger, the sheriff's office is all under one roof, all working as a family together. And I want you to know that's something that I think is great. It is fantastic here. It has saved this community a tremendous amount of money. I can pick up my coffee cup and walk down the hall and talk to any one of those other agencies and find out what's happening in the city, what's happening with the highway patrol, the game wardens. It is very unique. And we are, if you don't believe it, we are the gem of the state of Texas. This county, why would everybody want to move here if it was such a terrible place? It comes from a lot of hard work, and it comes from a lot of communication and efforts on the whole law enforcement family. So my goal is to make sure that as long as I'm in office, that I maintain and keep that family tradition here in Gillespie County and keep us all together, working together for each and every one of y'all. That's what we do. We're here for you.
Okay, so this has been a big question for me. So what I want you to understand is once I knew I was running for office, one of the first things I did was study the budget. The current budget goes back to 2021, 2022, onward to this direction. I can see the increases of every year. Basically, since 2021, we've increased the patrol salary by almost $2 million, and maybe just a tad bit more. But here's what I want to say. I also looked at the jail. That's another $3.5 million, and you look at the total for 8. But realistically, we have a dispatch communications. That's $1.9 million. For whatever reason, the dispatch does not fall under the sheriff anymore, and that's a good question. And what that means, that really our budget for the sheriff's office should be $10 million. It should be that we are working hand in hand with our communications, which we do not. Now, I will never take away that the sheriff does not walk down the hall and have coffee with the chief or coffee with the different people. That's true. I will say that's true. But we have an agency of the Fredericksburg Police Department that connected with Bernie Police Department, that connected with Kerr County to create a tactical unit to protect our citizens. Why is our sheriff's department not working with the PD to create a tactical team? Because realistically, to create a tactical team, you need at least a minimum of 75 members to create a two-crack, because you need 2 to make 2 full teams. We should have a full team from the SO and a full team from the PD so that no matter what, our citizens in this county are protected. Kerr County and Kendall County are currently working on the same type of situation that the cities are doing, but they are not getting the same reception from Gillespie County. Folks, what I'm trying to tell you is I understand this, but here's what I'm going to say when you ask my experience of leadership. Back when I started teaching, Paul Lastrike called me up and he said, I need to talk to you. I said, yes, sir. He brought me in his office. He said, Chris, I got all these attaboys. I'm looking at your time. I need to make sure that what you're doing is you want to do this. Is it? I said, Paul, I am having the time of my life. I'm going to tell you, when I was writing my letter of resignation, I could not believe that 22 and a half years had gone by, because I was in this with my heart, in it with my passion. But here's the deal. He looked at me and he said, Chris, you can do this, and I'll give you full run, but do not embarrass me. And I looked at him and said, Chief, you're covered, because I'm not going to embarrass me. And so he said, deal. We shook hands on it. From that point on, there was an incident where we thought we had a bomb in the school. The chief of police arrived on scene, and he looked at me, and I immediately went to that role that he's the chief. And I said, Chief, what do you got? He goes, no, what do you got? You're in charge of the schools, Chris. What do you want me to do? And I said, really, I need someone to shut down traffic over there by the tennis courts on Highway Street. Don't let anyone else in, because we need the fire trucks in here. The other thing is that when I worked under Steve Wetz, he also gave me the full run of it, and he allowed me to make sure that I took care of the schools. And not only did I take care of the schools in a leadership role, I created a safety plan from the ground up to protect all our teachers, to protect all our students, and it's called ACT, A-C-C-T. That is the same training I give to churches, that is the same training I give to businesses, and that is the same training I give to schools. So if you want to know if I have leadership and the ability to build, I've done it, and I've proven it to this county. The reason that I've received over 20 awards, including the Public Servant of the Year for the city of Fredericksburg, I've received many things throughout this county and different awards, and I would love to show them all to you, and I'd love for you to find them. But to me, to be a leader, yes, I can lead these people in the sheriff's office. I was responsible for over 3,000 people for 22 years. Now, money-wise, I had a budget with the school. I had to make sure that if I needed something, I had to go to the bosses and say, hey, this is what I need. So there is a budget for the school. Yes, it's not $8.6 million, but here's what I'm going to say. When it comes to training, our deputies do not have tasers. We have a use of force continuum that says we have to go through different steps to get to a point. So to me, not having that taser means that deputies have to get physical with some of our suspects, which could mean disease transfer, it could mean injuries. That taser is a de-escalation tool. I've used it. I've watched it work in my profession. The PD has them. So what I'm saying about the budget is this. There might be things on that I might say that this is fat. The way I want to run the SO, this isn't working. The way they want to run the SO, that's their story. But my job is to go in there and decide what is best for the officers to be equipped, trained, to be able to protect the citizens of this community and also protect them financially. Because when those officers get physical and it looks horrible on video and they file a lawsuit, who's going to pay those $1 million lawsuits? You will, as taxpayers. So we have to make sure that they are given full run of training, not just the mandatory training, because the state of Texas requires us to have all this training. But we need to look at that and say we need to double that. We need to triple that. We need to make sure that happens. And all I can say again, I keep telling you, go look at the records. I appreciate that. question, and I'm glad I was able to answer that.
Sheriff, I'm going to allow a follow-up.
Okay, I want to make a follow-up with that. I want y'all to know that the Gillespie County Sheriff's Office, the Kendall County Sheriff's Office, and Kerr County, probably about 2 years ago, created a criminal interdiction unit where we have officers that are assigned to that do criminal interdiction throughout the county and throughout the counties. They do it all over. And I want you to know that that team has been doing very well in our area. As far as working with the police chief and them, we are a team already. If the chief calls me or anybody needs anybody to help, we help each other hand in hand all the time. And I want to maybe emphasize this, and I think maybe the administrators in some of those other counties, quite frankly, may not have the excellent working relationship that Chief Vorauer and I do here in this county. That may just be something that's happened. I don't know. I don't know for sure. But I do know that we work together with other agencies. We work together right here with our other agencies. And so as far as not being able to work with each other, that's one thing. He hit on dispatch a little bit. Several years ago, shortly after I constructed the jail in Gillespie County, the Commissioner's Court, which nobody has asked a question about Commissioner's Court. I want you all to realize that that is another deal that we work with as an elected official. That's where our budgets come from. That's where our whole process gets worked through. And at that time, years and years ago, maybe they thought I had too many people to work with or whatever. So they decided at that time to remove the dispatch center and create it into a combined dispatch on behalf of the whole county, that's fine. It works well. I don't have any problem with it. I think it's been working well for quite a while. Cost-wise, yeah, it might be a little bit more expensive to have it broke off like that. As you create other agencies within the county, you create cost because there's extra people. You can't run them quite as efficiently as we did at that time, but that was something that was out of my control through the budget process with Commissioner's Court years and years ago. That's it.
This would be for both of you?
Can I just get 10 seconds in real quick?
We're going to let him respond.
All I want to say is this. Again, I'm a researcher and studier. Every job in this county, from treasurer to auditor to commissioners to you name it, all do not require you have a background in a budget. It's not everybody has to know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this with pride. My aunt started off as a dispatcher for the Atascosa County Sheriff's Department. She would then work part-time as a assistant for tax season. And then in 1969, she took over the job as county auditor with only a high school education and would hold that job for 25 years. So she is my inspiration to say, I can do this. Thank you.
I want to thank you both for putting yourselves out there. This question's for both of you. So what drives you to help others, and what is your personal motivation to lead in this office?
I'm sorry, Pastor, I couldn't hear that question.
Would you mind repeating your question, please?
Please.
You betcha. What drives you to help others, and what is your personal motivation to lead in this office?
My love of human beings. I tell you what, as a law enforcement officer, we see them in some of the worst times of their life. I've experienced that. I started off my career as a game warden, which at that time I was enforcing the laws on behalf of those that didn't have a voice. If you think about it, the deer, the turkey, the fowl, no, but they didn't have a voice. They didn't have a voice. So it was my job to protect them and do the very best that I could and interact with the people that were actually harvesting them or hunting them or enjoying the outdoors. So my love of people has helped me tremendously to do this. My love of everything here in this nation that we can do, and I like the opportunity to serve, and that's what I've done for years and years and years. It's in my heart. I'm a go-getter. I run all the time. I probably work too much, but I don't know that too much could be too much when it comes to supporting the community And my drive is the fact that I know beyond a reasonable doubt that when I go home at night and I lay my head down on the pillow that we have done something good. I have done something good for this community and empowered people to do the right thing. That is what I enjoy the most out of being able to support this community, protect this community, love this community, and live in this community. Thank you.
So for me, you know, I was that little kid that became a police officer because he watched all the cop shows. And you know, and I can say this, that when you watch those as a kid, and I used to dream about being a police officer to the point that it annoyed my family because I was throwing everybody in jail, so to speak. So the reality of it is this, is that there was always something I wanted to do. But most importantly, I came across great men that were police officers that led by example, that led by pride, that led by respect, that led by honor. But the most important man in my life was my father, and he led by God. And when I became a police officer, the most important thing for me was to treat every single individual the same way. I don't care if they had $1 million in the checking account or they had $10 in the checking account. Everybody counted for me. When I graduated from the academy, there was a gentleman by the name of Jack Dean who was a U.S. Marshal. He was our guest speaker. And man, I was enthralled by that guy because he was talking about how we treat people, how we do this. And he looked at us and he said, I challenge you that if you treat the poorest man in your community the same way you treat the richest, you will continue to do your job and enjoy it. But most importantly, folks, in this world that we live in, God is starting to sneak out because we're letting him. And here's the deal. Working with youth, folks, I can tell you my wife will, well, if you only knew what our kids are feeling, and if you only knew the work of God that goes on in that school. That's why I challenge any of you to do it, go in there, do it the right way. You will see the pain of our children. I have worked with parents, that with students that don't even have parents, and when they're in trouble, no one's coming, sir, and they're not lying. I have to find the closest relative. So to me, it's a God-driven force that keeps me doing this every day. Now, I am a law enforcement officer. I have no qualms throwing you in jail if you need it. I have no qualms fighting you if you need it. But at the same time, when we're finished, I have to stand there and say, what is going on with that person that he was willing to fight me to the very tooth and nail? What is going on with that child that child keeps getting in trouble? That's what we have to do, not just in the schools, but in our community. All those kids that I taught for 22 years old are now old. My first group is turning 32. I just want you to know that. So I'm not that old by any standards. But I believe in my God. I believe in that. I believe in my father in 1981 received the Public Servant of the Year Award in our community of Jordan, Texas, where I was born and raised. And I was committed to achieving the same thing my father did because of his community commitment. And in 2020, I was given the same award here in Gillespie County. So, folks, what drives me is you. Everyone in this room has had a bad day. Everyone in this room has had some tough times in your life that you didn't think you were going to get through, but I promised you when you prayed, the answer showed up. I promise you, I pray daily, and I'm going to be honest with you, this trip on this endeavor of running for sheriff has probably been one of the most spiritual moments I've felt because I lean on God. And here's what I'm going to tell you. As a sheriff, I may not, everybody keeps saying it's administrative, you got to do this, but here in the Bible says there's a time to laugh, there's a time to cry, there's a time for joy. There's a time to ride on patrol with your deputies. There's time to listen to your deputies. There's time to work with the community, and there's time to make sure you've taken that time out to be with your family. Earlier, the sheriff asked me why I left. I did those jobs for 22 years because it gave me the ability to be with my family in the evenings, to be with my family on the weekends, to be with them in the holidays. So in return, I gave them 150% every day, God-driven.
Next question, somebody.
Actually, I have a couple.
I was going to say right here. Yeah.
And let me say, Sheriff Buddy Mills, that I think you are a constitutional sheriff because you actually follow the rule of law. I understand January 6th and what happened was a big hot button for everybody, but truly that needs to be brought up at a national level with the FBI, and those laws need to be looked at. Just my comment. Now, questions. Number one, as you have pointed out, great school resource officer for all these 22 years. It has been brought up in the past discussions that perhaps you don't have as much experience to fill the shoes of a full-time sheriff right now, and that you would ramp up and you would hire people to come in and kind of support you while you're trying to learn the ropes. And my one question to you, Mr. Ayala, is who would you hire as your lieutenants going to, if you are elected? And what kind of experience will they possess if they're going to cover while you have that time that you're learning? The second question to both of you would be what specific, and I mean specific, not generalized answers, but specific things that you would do, 3 of them at least, to improve our county jails, and how would you expect to pay for that?
I'll go first on this one since you went first last time. All right, so the answer to your question is who would be my lieutenant? My wife doesn't even know who's going to be lieutenant. My wife doesn't even know who's going to be the chief deputy if I so choose that. I would rather win first, sit down with the current group of people, discuss my vision, discuss where I see us going, and then make that decision. It is also against the ethics committee or rules of the running for office. I cannot name those people. So if people want to know why I don't name them, I don't name them. Second of all, I haven't won yet. So I think it would be very disrespectful to walk up to those people and say, hey, I want to make you this, I want to make you that, I want to make you this, and then I don't win. But the other thing is there was a lot of controversy about how people were treated because their names were mentioned for certain positions. And I don't want to do that to anyone I feel that way for. Second of all, anyone that I would consider, and there's a group of them, they don't know it yet, anyone I would consider, I have no doubt in my mind this community would be like, wow. There's no doubt in my mind, I'm going to say this, I associate with high caliber people in law enforcement, and that's the kind of people I would put in that position. If they did not see the vision for the people that I have, then they would not be in that department. Simple as that, in that office with me. So the answer to that question is that. 3 things. One is I would love to sit down with every deputy, have a conversation, treat them as an individual, and work on finding out what they need and how do we develop a department, an office that runs efficiently, because we all have different likes, we all have different tastes. What do they see that they have the best attribute for the community? How can they do that? Second thing would be is I'm going to sit down and listen to the people. I want to have meetings. I want people to come in. I want to have the Knights of the Round Table from you. And you may give me something I don't want, but guess what? It's what I don't want that sometimes make me better. And it's sometimes what I don't want was what makes the county better. The third thing is this. When it comes to that jail, I do not like the continual recidivism that we are seeing now. Before I ran for sheriff, I went and visited with 15 former students that are formerly and currently rehabilitated. They are no longer addicted. They are no longer. I don't even smoke, drink, chew, or dip. So I can't speak on the behalf of those people. Oh, yeah, I know what drugs are. I don't know what it's about. I don't even know what a high addiction except to Rocky Road is about. That's just the way I roll. So my goal would be to say, create a department that or the office that creates a system in our jail that allows these individuals to learn. One of the things I was proud to be a part of was the Christian Job Corps here in Gillespie County, was to find a way to keep them from being a continual recidivism for our county and a budget problem for our taxpayers. So that's the 3 things that I would work on both, and that includes the jail, and that includes the patrol, that includes the staff, the secretary, all 63. I would want to sit down with all of them, hear what they had to say, learn from what they have to say, so that when you say that one, that's around the top. Thank you.
Okay, hold on. She asked you one more part of that question. How would you pay for it?
So first of all, if elected sheriff, I would have to really sit down and dissect that budget to see where we could say this was weak here, this was strong here. The other thing is I'm a big idea of grants. And I'm going to tell you right now, the Kimball County Sheriff said he got over $5.2 million in grant money. Here's the way I look at it. If a deputy says, this is what I want, I'm not expecting him to say, this is what I want, trying to walk out. I expect that deputy or that officer to make every effort to find how can we fund that. I want them to be a part of the solution. The other thing is I truly believe that if you provide the best service for a community, there are a lot of people that have no problem donating money to the sheriff's office or to the PD. The PD currently has a group that will help raise money to get the equipment that the current budget doesn't have. I've said this from day one. We cannot just rely on the taxpayers' money that we put in our budget. So we have to figure out a way to go outside the box and make it work for the community by making extra effort. There's a lot of ways to do that. I will make sure we tap into every avenue.
Okay, I want to let y'all know that the budget process is just now coming up. That is what we do when the budget process opens up. I get with the lieutenants. They go out to the sergeants go out to the staff. They find out what all their needs are, if there's anything, any new training, any new equipment, anything that they need, and they compile all of that, and we sit down as a team and compile the budget. And that's vehicles, and that's equipment, that's training, everything goes into that budget. So it's a very detailed budget. It's got several lines in it. If you'd like to look at it, it's online, and have at it, because it's a big one. It's a thick one. But I want you to know that there are always new advancements happening within the sheriff's office. We're always looking forward to tax savings and making things better for everybody here in the county. So we're launching a few deals through this budget process. We'll be coming up here pretty soon. Y'all will be hearing about them during the budget process. There may be a few changes within the jail, some of the structuring there within the jail. And when it comes to recidivism in that jail, it's a 96-bed jail. It's kind of a cross between a high school and a hospital. If you haven't been in there or you haven't toured, please get with me. We'll give you a tour of it so you can see your jail. But in jail, we started as soon as we opened that on 4/15 of 2015. Shortly after that, I got with the Ministry Alliance group here in the county, and that's where groups of pastors and other parishioners come in, and they visit with the inmates through a church service. We also have drug awareness classes that are taught in the jail. We have alcohol awareness classes that are taught in there. So we give them the initial first steps to making their life better when they get out of the facility. But I want y'all to remember that everybody that's in there is considered innocent till proven guilty. So they're all pre-detainees waiting for their day in court. And some of them have quite a bit of time to spend in there before they float up on their court deal. So it gives them that opportunity to seek those deals in there. We do not mandate them, because an individual is only going to change themselves once they realize that they have hit the lowest low in their life. And then and only then will they actually move up from that. If not, they're going to continue to be a recidivism person that will continue to come into our system, out of our system, onto probation, back around. The door just keeps revolving. This right here was a great program to interject into the jail. We did it, like I said, shortly after 4/15 of 15. We interjected that into that program, and there are a lot of success stories running around this county. I see them in convenience stores, and I see them other places, and they say, you know what, Sheriff, that was really a great thing. It gave me that first step in my ability to stay out of your jail. And I tell them every day, well, I hope you can keep doing it, because I know some of the vices that are out here right now, the drugs, the fentanyl, all of this stuff makes it very difficult for people to stay out of there. And so most of them they're staying out of that jail. And it is what it is on some of them. But anyway, we work very diligently on that. I have a few grants. Senate Bill 22, which just came in. It was during that last legislative session. When I was president of the Sheriff's Association, I worked very diligently and hard with the governor, with the lieutenant governor, with the representatives in testifying on behalf of that and helping that legislation pass through, which has brought just to our county $350,000 additional dollars in funds to be used. And I interjected that into the salaries of the individuals that work throughout the whole sheriff's office to help give them a better life here in the county, because as y'all all know, it's very expensive to live here. It costs a lot. Also, I just recently received an Operation Stone Garden grant, which gives us the opportunity to have officers out on the road targeting nothing other than human smuggling, drugs, and cartel activity. That has just started off. It just kicked off this year. It's a small grant, but as we progress through there, it has the opportunity to grow based on our track record of what we do. So I'm looking at all kind of things to help save you money, save your taxpayer dollars, and to spend them as frugally as possible. And the grants, the state grants, are just one method that we use. Bulletproof grants, we've got all kind of grants that we're already utilizing. It has already cut down on some of y'all's cost.
I just wanted to make a follow-up comment on my question regarding the Supremacy Clause and why I asked you both that question. We've heard a lot tonight about law enforcement's job is to enforce the law. That's kind of logical, right? But the reason it's so important that a sheriff understands the Supremacy Clause is because sometimes the legislature or some other branch of the government makes a law. They call a law. It's not a law. DOJ says parents who speak in front of school boards, who say things the school board don't like, can be arrested for domestic terrorism. We know in Williamson County that happened. They were handcuffed and put in jail. We know that red flag laws are in contradiction to the Second Amendment. So the reason it's important is because if you don't know, the Supremacy Clause says it has to be it has to abide with the Constitution or it's null and void. So you don't enforce all laws if they're not in alignment with the Constitution. So that's the important part. I didn't hear that from you guys.
You got it. Okay, anybody else? Oh, here's a new one.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my question is for both of you. Do you believe in term limits? And if you do, how many consecutive years is too many?
Sheriff, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good one. They have, there has been some legislation in the past trying to impose some term limits. I mean, they've actually got them on a few other deals. I know our city council has something like that. Currently, right now in state government, I do not believe that there are any things other than maybe the governor and a couple of them that have some term limits. They can only serve so long. Yeah, if something like that comes along, that would be fine. If there's a law that changes that, I believe that when you first get in office, there's a lot of learning curves. There's a lot of things that you have to learn how to navigate and how to work with other elected officials throughout the county. And I will tell you that I came from a state agency, Parks and Wildlife, where I thought things moved kind of slow. And then when I got into county government, I realized that it really went slow. So it takes some time. So I guess my recommendation would be if maybe they wanted to do some kind of term limits, then yeah, I might say for a sheriff maybe 20 years because I actually have 15. And she asked. I thought I'd just throw it out there. That might be something. I will be active in the legislature, and if there is a overwhelming support of that across this state for that type of legislation or something, but I'm happy. I'm happy to serve, and if you want to say, I might just say 20 years. But I don't know what the legislature would do. That is actually something that would have to come from concerned citizens. As you know, your representatives and your state senators, they're your voice up there in the Capitol in Austin. They're the ones that you visit with out here in the community, and you interject your ideas, and that's how they get up there. Then they're talked about and discussed, and then everybody of the state, all the representatives and the senators, they get together over in the House and over in the Senate, and they discuss these rules and regulations. And this is where our laws come from. And they start with information like that. So if you would like to interject that into your local representative or state senator, they might listen to you. Thank you.
Mr. Ayala.
Okay, so let me say this. The most powerful man in America is given 2 terms. That's the max. So our founding forefathers did believe in term times. They did believe in that, because if not, they would have said the president can be president as long as he gets elected into office. So here's what I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this with all due respect to all our presidents. Some of our presidents have done 1 term, and some of our presidents have done 2 terms. And he's correct. There is a lot of learning curve in that first year or 2 as a president, or it would be as a sheriff and so forth. But our founding fathers set the term of term limits by saying 2 terms for our president. The most powerful man in America, the most powerful man in the globe, has only 2 terms. As far as I'm concerned, here's the way I look at it. I would say 12 years is a max. Here's why. Because I think that the goal is to get in there. The first 3 years is to build. 8 years to prove that your plan is effective and it's working because you've listened to your community, you've listened to your officers, you built a division, and then you start to make sure you create the future people. And you don't just have 1 future maybe sheriff, you don't have just 2, you have an entire department that could take your spot away from you if they decided to, because they've been trained, they've been given the ability, they've been given the knowledge, and they are able to step up to that. I believe that in our country, the presidents of the United States should be symbols of what we can become. And I don't think if our founding forefathers said, hey, we want him to be president forever, they would have put that in there. So our founding fathers knew that putting someone in office for too long, it doesn't mean that they're doing a bad job. They could be doing a great job for 8 years, but they said 8 years is it. And the way I look at it is this. If elected, my goal is to get in there and make sure that I create a standard that the next person is like, this is going to be tricky to do this. You will not know. My goal is to make sure that while I'm a sheriff, that you will not think, everything's changing, it's an election year. I want to make sure that you think that I'm running for office every single year I am in there. So to answer that question, term limits are important because our president is only given 2 terms.
All right. Alicia, I know you've had your hand up a couple of times. She's had her head up.
This question is for both of you. Who did you vote for in the 2016 primary and the 2020 primary?
Chris, you want to go first? Why? I mean, why? Let them answer it. Chris, do you want to go first? Chris.
I'm just going to say sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. That's just the way I look at it. You can put in the last terms of what's happening. Sometimes you win and sometimes you don't.
Buddy?
I voted for Trump. Plain and simple. You want somebody transparent, then you just ask them a question and they should give you an answer. And thank you for the question and the opportunity to tell you what I actually did. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, is anyone not asked a question?
There's been a lot of talk about leadership or lack thereof, experience or lack thereof. So, Sheriff Mills, how much sheriffing experience did you have before you became sheriff?
It's just a change in a title. It's a change in a badge. It's a change in a uniform. You either have the leadership skills or you have the ability to do it. It's something that's ingrained in you. When I came out of Parks and Wildlife, they just threw us out in the field. We had a car, we had our gun, we had our law book, and we had to decide how we were going to work. We were not managed. We were pretty well put out there. We'd have a supervisor who'd come by and check on us. We'd turn in our reports. So I lived that leadership role of knowing when to work and knowing the people and things of that nature. When I moved to Gillespie County 32 years ago, I had an office there in the sheriff's office, the old one right there behind the courthouse, that little bitty one back there. I was in that office with those officers off and on. You know, most of the time I didn't see them on the weekends because I was really busy, but during the week. And I learned from living in that environment there exactly what the sheriff, the chief deputy, the lieutenants, the sergeants, the jail, the dispatch, I learned everything in all aspects of that by being observant, by listening, and understanding what was going on. And then, yes, once I was elected, I was thrust into that position. And you know what I did in that position? I took all of the individuals there and interviewed them, everybody that was working at the sheriff's office at that time. Because like people say, a lot of times they come in and they remove all leadership. They remove all leadership and bring in their friends. What I actually did was visit with each one of them, interviewed them for 3 days, and then I hired every individual in that sheriff's office, and they stayed in their current position where they were at on patrol as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, as an administrator, and we moved forward. And as a team, we moved forward and have created the sheriff's office into what it is today. So it was hands-on, by being in that office all the time, by learning what was happening in there, by visiting with the family, and I call them a family because they are a family, with visiting with them and understanding the intricacies of how a sheriff's office works. It's just a change. I changed my badge, I changed my uniform, and I don't wear a uniform anymore. And I walked in that day when I was sworn in as a sheriff, and we moved forward from there. That's what I've done.
Okay, again, you know that I'm still a patrolman. I still wear a uniform. I'm still in a patrol car. I still do traffic stops. I still issue citations. I still do things that a patrolman does. So for me, the only difference would be, yes, it would be a different title. But I know what it's like to sit in a car and look at an MDT, run it, do all those different things. So for me, it would just be definitely a title that has experience as a patrol officer. I'm not taking anything away from Buddy as a game warden. I'm sure he was an awesome game warden. But there is a difference in the professions of when you're doing domestic disputes, when you're doing high speed, you know, I'm sure he helped out, but as a patrol officer, we're doing all the above. We're doing everything. I'm not taking away, I work with some amazing game wardens in South Texas, and I can name them because they're just amazing game wardens. But what I want to say is this, is to me, the experience that I have is, and he said he protected animals, I've been protecting people, so to speak, as a law enforcement officer for over 32 years now. So to me, that's where the experience comes from. The same thing that I look at for being a patrol officer is that's where it starts. That's the meat and potatoes. And then you work your way up. I did it a different way. When people think about leadership, I tested for sergeant. I was given the opportunity to be sergeant, but I turned it down because my passion and my heart was in the schools with the kids. So don't think that I couldn't promote. Don't think I didn't promote because they didn't want me to promote. I chose not to promote. The other thing is when you look at promotion, when you talk about working, when he's talking about working in the office with them, I was with them on calls. I was with them on pursuits. I was with them in wrestling matches. I stepped up. We worked together, that kind of stuff. So having the knowledge as a ground roots officer, I think will give me a great understanding of not just being a game warden, but being a patrol officer for both city structure and for also county structure. I did 4.5 years as a sheriff's deputy in South Texas, and someone has said, well, he was unsupervised. That is not correct. When I worked for the school, I was supervised by Sergeant Brian Phillips, and he would always, I would say this, we always joke, but he always gave me an exceed standards in my evaluations, or that met standard stuff, but I always did hard work. And so here's what I look at as an employee, as a person. I want every deputy that works with me to have the ability to do the best that they can without my eyes on them, and I know they're doing it. And that's where I look at, because I know what it's like to be on a 12-hour shift when you're staring at the glass and you're like, okay, something's got to happen. And then you're complaining because something started to happen. So that's where you look at it. But my ground roots is as a patrol officer, and I'm still one 32 years later.
Okay, this is for both candidates. Have you read the U.S. Constitution and/or the state Constitution? Seems like a silly question, but if you haven't, then you won't know what laws are in conflict with either one.
So the answer to that question is yes. I have read the Constitution. I taught the Constitution for many years. I've read our state Constitution, which is almost like our U.S. Constitution. The supreme thing for me, and I should have said this earlier, but if you look at our Constitution, it talks about our God-given rights. That's in the Constitution. It's in our freedom, what God gave us. So that's really the conflict. The conflict should be that if we follow the Ten Commandments, we wouldn't need a Constitution. We wouldn't need all these laws. But because we don't follow the Ten Commandments in our country, basic commandments, that's why we had to create law after law after law. So when we look at the Constitution and we look at our Supreme Court basically, they said the legislators create it, the executive branch enforces it, which puts us underneath there, and then when we make that, the Supreme Court evaluates whether the law was just to the people and whether us enforcing it was done properly, enforcing a law, whether or not it was enforced, or whether that law was actually legit for the people. And then once it gets to Supreme Court, then we learn, did that work or did it not work? And then we keep that circle going over and over and over. So realistically, that's why I said earlier, as long as the legislators are following the Constitution as it was written, then the law should be written as such. If the executive branch execute those and understand that they were written in that same form, then that should work fine. And then we should basically look at our Supreme Court and they should be bored. That's just the way I look at it.
I want to let you know that, yes, I have read both of them, and if you look at them very closely, I believe that the only difference is one of them is a state constitution, the other one is the U.S. Constitution. There's not quite as many amendments in the Texas Constitution as there are in the United States Constitution. And as far as the difference between them or where they do not overlap, I would like to have a little bit more instructions on that. I'd like to find out where you think the conflict is between the U.S. Constitution and the state Constitution, because they both give us our rights, and they both give us those inalienable rights that we both possess. And the state Constitution then follows most of those at the same time. But there's not as many amendments in our Texas Constitution as there is in the U.S. Constitution.
Right here in front. Okay, George.
Okay, the bad guys are always investigating ways to outsmart us. What do you think are the methods, such as AI or other technologies, that are the most threatening? And how do you expect to be smarter than them and outwit them? Okay.
Who would you like to go first?
Either one.
Either one?
I'll go first on this one. Yes, I will tell you that AI, or artificial intelligence, is something that's being generated right now. How many of y'all received those calls from the guy that wants you to sell your car insurance or an extended warranty on your car, and you see a local telephone number that shows up and pops up? Well, that's the ability for them to spoof some of those numbers and do that. So in order to stay on top of that and to get the very best knowledge, I utilize the working relationships with those agencies that have the tremendous amount of knowledge and resources in order to decipher and to actually apprehend those. And those would be those federal agencies that we have discussed and talked about this evening that have the ability to do that. When we meet in different areas and have instructions from other agencies, a lot of them come in and they will update us on some of the latest technology that is coming out, how people are scamming other people and Bitcoining them and everything else. So I will tell you, the best thing, I believe, especially they put skimmers on gas pumps, everything else. The best thing to do is to be vigilant, and we'll try to catch them as best we can. But unfortunately, a lot of these people that are preying on the people in the United States aren't even in this country. They're over in other countries. And a tremendous amount of influx of people that have been coming across this border from all these other countries, they're bringing some technology from other countries that could be very detrimental to us here in the United States. So it's something that we work on all the time, but we usually get most of that information from our outside sources through some of our training programs. But artificial intelligence is going to be the new way of scamming people and ripping them off. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So when it comes to that, just like we have a full-time job that we work every day, that's what they do on a full-time basis, is looking for ways to take money from you, to take advantage of you. My suggestion, and what I would suggest, is that there are lots of entities out there, because the banks don't want to lose their money, because some of these companies don't want to lose their money. There are a lot of programs, if you look online with these companies, these banks, credit cards and everything, that offer trainings, offer ways and solutions for you not to get scammed by that. But my motto is, when in doubt, don't give it out. You almost have to now be careful how you answer the phone or questions on the phone. Because if they call you and say, is your name such and such, and you say yes, all they really wanted was the word yes, so that they can record it and play it later so that they can say yes to a program that gets them into that. So you talk about a constant vigilance. I ain't got time. That's just the way it is. Do it. The other thing that I would recommend, and I'm not here to put anyone's age down or anything, if you have grandkids, have them come sit down with you with your phone, with your iPad, and have them show you, because if there's anyone that has learned to circumvent the system, it's high school age kids. They can figure it out. I can tell you that our IT people in both the schools here in Fredericksburg and the school district in Comfort, they spend their entire time, there's one person that all they're trying to do is keep the kids from getting around their firewalls. So I'm just saying there's a lot that's offered for free out there. There's a lot of stuff. But here's what I'm going to say this. If you get a voicemail, a message, I would sit there, and I'm going to say this, go online and see if this is a scam. I had one the other day, it didn't look right. I typed it up, and sure enough, it was a scam. Take the time. Don't make any immediate responses to that. But I think it's going to go through education put on by law enforcement to do that in all fashions and have an opportunity to connect different agencies with law enforcement to help prevent y'all guys getting your money taken.
Thanks. Harvey Millering. Chris, I just want to ask you, you being in law enforcement, why was your house for sale at the courthouse steps?
Mr. Millering, I could not be more happy that you asked that question. So now we're talking about a personal struggle, okay? So we're talking about the federal government. In 2008, the birth of my twins was one of the most awesome things for a father to have two sons to add to my other two sons. So what I was doing, and prior to that, I always took out more taxes so that at the end of the year I could cover what the government needed, and I would always get a big chunk of change at the end of the year. So I was planning on using that big chunk of change to cover my daycare for my children, because I knew that it was going to be $1,850 a month to cover daycare costs, because my twins plus my boy was going to be the equivalent to 5 children. But here's the deal. So when I went to get my taxes that year, and if you don't believe me, look this up. It's called legacy error. So in 1996, my dad was overpaid Social Security. He died in 2000. 2009, the federal government garnished $9,772 out of my income tax check that I was counting on to pay for my children. So that I went to Chase Bank and I said, hey, this is going to be a problem. What was happening in 2009, 2008? The housing market crashed. The government failed us. And not only did the government fail us, but big Chase, big banks failed us because they were giving loans that shouldn't have been given out. So in that mix, I called the bank. I was raised, you own up, you talk first, you make the first call, don't let them come after you. So I called Chase. We made an agreement. And we made an agreement that in 6 months, they were going to put an extension, and in 6 months in October, I would take over that with that. And in October, my wife got a call from the bank that said, you are delinquent 5 months. I said, no, I currently have a confirmation number for an extension. I even have the paperwork to now enter that into the computer so they could start direct removal out of my checking account like I had done for the 2.5 years prior. But when she said that we were 5 months behind, I called this lady, and I'm going to tell you, this started a battle that lasted 12.5 years that I fought for my house, Mr. Millering. And not only that, I fought the government and I fought the big bank, J.P. Morgan Bank. And it wasn't just once, it was 4 times they put my house on foreclosure. And 4 times I stood my ground by myself, no attorney, and I looked them in the eyes and said, what you did to me was wrong. It came down that when the forms were signed, my wife missed a form. And they said, your wife didn't sign the form. And I said, email it to me, fax it to me. I'll get my wife to sign it, and then I'll send it back. You said, nope, you're no longer eligible because you're 5 months behind. I said, how do we solve this? I got stuck in the Obama crap. That's the best way to look at it. For 13 years, I struggled to save my house. I made payments, and at one point, I could show in my checking account where they were deducting it, but it wasn't coming off my house. And the next thing that happened is they all of a sudden sent me a letter, a tax letter that said they were going to forbear $83,000 off my house. Now, here's what I want you to understand. God gave me 3 beautiful sons, 2 beautiful boys, and now I'm fighting for the house that belonged to my father-in-law. And I was fighting the government, and I was fighting Chase J.P. Morgan, and I knew I was right. That's why I didn't get a lawyer. I was willing to stand my ground. And I can tell you right now, they record all this stuff. I made a commitment to God in March of 2009 that I would never be mean, disrespectful to any representative at Chase because it's not their fault. This is the big bank problem. So this went on. I was attempted to foreclose them 4 times. Each time I was supposed to go to court, they would come and say, we got it taken care of. They forbeared $83,000, which meant I had to pay $27,000 in taxes. So I only had 14, so I very kindly gave the government $14,000, and then I made payments for the next 2.5 years until I paid off my debt of $27,000. Here's the problem. They never took the $83,000 off my note. So then I went back to the bank and I said, hey, this is not working, because I thought it was a hell of a deal. I would get saved $50,000, and then the IRS would get $30,000. It was a perfect deal because now my house was saved. but it wasn't. I got caught up in a cycle of the bank putting me from one point to the next point to this point that lasted 12 and a half years. 2019, I called Chase Bank and I said, look, I need one human being that will listen to my situation and take the time to look into it. Her name is Joanne Wadker, and I will give you her number. You can call her as I call her every October. Because in 2019 of that October, Joanne Wadker saved me and said, Mr. Ayala, I apologize. I cannot believe that you've been enduring this for 12 and a half years. So in 2019, Chase Bank looked at me and said, we've made a mistake. We're going to fix it. And my house was on the steps that day. And I looked at her and I said, Joanne, I know you're going to help me, but I got to be in court next Tuesday. She goes, give me a bit. And I listened to her argue with the other half of Chase Bank because those two guys couldn't communicate. And she put me on hold. She came back. It's taken care of. Don't worry about it. And in 2019, Joanne Wadker helped me rebuild my credit, helped me rebuild saving my house. And now and she said, in 1 year, Chris, you make a payment with us, get the hell out of Chase Bank. And now I'm under Rocket Mortgage. And I'm going to tell you right now, I fought the big banks by myself and did it for 12 years. And I'm going to tell you why I did it. Faith. I had the doubt in Hebrews 11:6 says, if you don't put your faith in God, then you're never going to get anything. I stood and my wife was my witness. I went to a foreclosure office, and I had a check to pay her to do bankruptcy. And I felt guilty because I'd been praying to God and asking for his support, and I told him I had all the faith. But now I'm sitting in this office. I'm not telling them I have faith. I'm now going to rely on man. And I looked at my wife, let's get out of here. So when you ask that question, Mr. Bellering, of anything of the rumors that have been floating and that I had my house foreclosed on, you have no idea what it was like to look at Elgin Snyder and deal with that. That is the biggest kick in the gut, that if anyone spreads that rumor, that's what hurts the most. I fought for my house. I beat the big bank, and one day I want to get my money back from the federal government. And here's the deal. After I talked to Joanne Wadker, I said, Joanne, I'm down to 4 months. I need to get my $27,000 back. In November of that year, the federal government, the IRS, handed me a check for $27,300 something plus $3,400 in interest, Mr. Mellering. So I fought the big banks and I won by myself.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is about 7:35. Do we have more questions? Mr. Tribes?
Yes. Excuse me. Can either one of you gentlemen think of any scenario where you would interpose between the citizens of this county and the federal government?
Can you say that, repeat that? I didn't hear it either.
Can you think of any scenario where you would interpose between the citizens of this county and the federal government? Any scenario?
Okay, guys, here's what I'm going to say. I love my country.
Is your mic dead?
Oh, sorry. I used to talk loud. I love my country, and it's God, to me, family, then country. That's the way I look at it. Where else can a guy like myself go to school, have a family, and have an opportunity to stand up here except in this great country? What other country allows you to make mistakes, go to jail, and still go on to do great things in a job? So the only thing that I can think of right now is the right to bear arms. And I know that in some people's mind, that's a huge topic. But I'm going to tell you right now, if that ever came to bear, which I hope and pray it never happens to, that is one that I will definitely not agree with the federal government. There are a lot of other things that we have to stand up for. But I'm going to say this, in anything that I do as a citizen of this county, there are strength in numbers. And if something like that happens, we have to agree that we protect the rights of the citizens. It was set in stone in over 257 years ago in our Constitution that we have a right to stand against our government because of the fact that's what they experienced back in the homeland of England. They did not want that to happen again. Imagine to me that the idea of them taking our guns, because there's experience across the globe where people did give up their guns and it didn't end well for them. That would be the biggest one in my mind that I have no doubt I would stand up for. And I've been asked that question before, and I said, here's the deal. If I'm a police officer, I would hand my boss my badge and say, be careful when you come to my house.
The Constitution has a lot of things in it, and we want to make sure that we do not allow those to be infringed upon. So I would interpose on anything that would violate any one of those rules of the Constitution. I'll give you an example, one of them right here that we're having the opportunity to do this evening. The first, that gives you the opportunity to come and to speak and to ask questions and peacefully assemble. So if somebody was to come in and says, y'all can't go here to Yee Haw, you can't have any debates like this, I would say, no, I'm sorry. That is something that we can do because the rights of the people are allowed here. So there will not be any federal government coming in and saying anything that we cannot do that. So I want you to know that there are several things that I would get involved in when it comes to violating your rights and the Constitution.
We have one more question. Is that right? April? And then we're going to call it quits because I think these guys have had enough.
Okay, this is a different subject. So, the Texas School Marshal Program allows trained school employees to carry concealed guns on campus. In view of Uvalde and similar incidents, what will you do as sheriff to support and encourage bringing carry programs for school staff to our public schools? And that's to both of you.
Okay. Who would like to go first?
I have actively been involved in the programs that are going on in some of our current schools around here right now, where they do have what's called a guardian program, where there are staff members, unknown staff members that carry guns on campus to be able to defend and to protect the students there. I've been involved with several school districts on that program. I think it's a great program. The School Marshals program is a little bit different. Both of them require quite a bit of training. There is a little bit of expense to the school districts when they implement something like that. But I believe the best thing is that, we're not always around and we may not always be there on campus. So the right for someone to actually be able to possess that firearm on campus and to actively defend and engage someone that's actually trying to do harm to one of the students or to the teachers is a very, very good deal. I have supported that 100%. I know when they were initiated it, I wanted to let them know the main thing is that when active law enforcement show up on the scene, please, whatever you do, do not stand up, do not be caught with a weapon because they're going to engage you. So those people are anonymous. They need to remain that way for their safety and security, and also for the predators that may be preying on our school. They don't need to know who they are. So the anonymity part of that is very strong, and we've got to protect that. And I support that program 100% on any of the campuses that want to do that. I think it's a great program, and I help them in their school safety plans, Doss, Harper, a bunch of other ones.
And I'm going to say this, the difference between the Guardian program versus the Marshal program is the number of hours. In order to carry a gun in the Guardian program, you only need a 16-hour training. I can tell you exactly how it goes, what it teaches the teachers and so forth. Here's the deal, if you've ever made fun of a security guard is only required to have 16 hours. So I'm not knocking the idea of a Guardian, but I do not like the 16 hours. I believe in more training. And not only do I believe in training, I believe in those officers that are going to respond to that district, work, it may be secret, but they work with those teachers. I want those teachers to be able to identify an officer, and I want an officer to be able to identify that teacher. We as professionals worry about blue on blue shootings, and I hate saying this, or brown on brown shootings, but we worry about that because of lack of training. So the state of Texas has mandated right now that every officer in the state of Texas, they do not care if you're a 70-year-old person in the law enforcement, you are mandated to take that. The Marshal program, which I really like, is about 80 to 120 hours. That to me is adequate training. That used to be what it took to be a reserve officer for the state of Texas. So you're going to get more training. I am not opposed to anyone. I think our citizens should carry guns. And I would say the same thing for you at your home. If you're not going to train to defend your home, you're probably going to be more problem than you are value. Training is the other thing. Number 2, psychological evaluations. If I'm a police officer and I have to go through a psychological evaluation to become a cop, then if you're going to carry a gun around 3,000 kids, you better go through a psychological as well. The other concern that I have is this. I've been training schools and churches and private businesses in carrying guns on their facilities. The problem is I want to make sure there's a standard of equipment. Will it fall out if I'm wrestling a student? How many of you are watching the news? More and more students are fighting teachers and they're taking them out. The last thing I need is for a teacher to get knocked out and now that kid has a weapon. So I want to make sure that they're trained in retention to keep that weapon safe. But at the same time, how many of you have ever carried a pistol off in your concealed? How much work is that? Be honest with me. Can you imagine trying to do that all day long, trying to teach? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm wore out at the end of the day. So all I'm saying is I'm 100% behind the Guardian program, but just because you can shoot a deer and hit it every year, it's not the same thing walking down a hall with kids coming at you, asking for help. It's not the same thing as a police officer going into that environment under an extreme amount of stress, carrying an AR-15, and have somebody come around the corner with a gun in their hand. I hate to say this, but bad's going to happen. So I am all about it, but we need to increase the training. And I think that's extremely important. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that. As an instructor myself who has trained at Fort Bragg, many places across this country, who is going to establish that psychological test? That's a big issue for me, because who is going to do it? You can have some Looney Tune make it so hard for an individual to pass a psychological test that they will never be able to do it. And then you put it on their record that they couldn't pass it.
Okay, so I'm going to say there's almost 1 million police officers across the country that passed a psychological exam. Also, currently, the state has made it mandated for a level 3 or 4 security officer to also go through a psychological evaluation now. So what they're doing is increasing the value of this. Now, I'm going to tell you from personal experience, I've been involved in multiple shootings. I have taken a man's life. And I'm going to tell you, if a teacher is involved in a shooting and kills a suspect, but also kills or wounds a student, they're done. I'm sorry. And the only reason I know that I was able to survive that is, one, I have a strong spiritual faith, but at the same time, that's what the psychological evaluation. It's not about pulling the trigger. It's also about the aftermath of a situation that you're involved in. So currently, right now, security guards companies across the country are they're required. It's about $300 for a security guard company to do it, but they are doing it. I like it, and you like it. You need it. So here's the deal. You can carry one as a citizen, and you don't need a psychological evaluation. And here's what I've learned in my career.
And that's what will be next.
Yes. What's that?
That's what will be next.
Okay.
You start putting in a psychological evaluation like that for a teacher at a school who has had 16 hours or more of training, and we're walking a slippery slope.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. Again, so here's what I'm going to tell you. The state of Texas does not prevent us from having guns on a campus. There's no law that says you can't, unless the school board has the signs posted, such as 30-06, 30-7. Then you better not carry that gun unless you've been approved. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. But I told school boards across the country that have asked me in the state, you can choose to have a psychological if you don't. That's my preference. If you don't, that's your call as a school district. You will then have to answer to that question if something happens. So the answer to your question is the school board decides whether or not they want it. I'm not saying if they don't that they're bad people, and I'm not saying if they do they're perfect people. All I'm saying is that's just one more step into that evaluation to make sure that our kids are around somebody that should be carrying a gun.
All peace officers, all jailers, all telecommunicators, everybody here in the state of Texas that works and carries a gun or is involved in security information, they all have to go through a psychological. Everybody has to pass a psychological. It's just part of the program which is required by the Health and Safety Code. Those are rules that we must abide by. Now, the other programs where the Guardian programs are and the schools programs are, those people are usually handpicked or volunteer through that program. Then they're put through the extensive training that gives them the confidence and the ability to do that. I do want you to know, though, that the psychological part of it is a very difficult thing because you've got to remember, and you as citizens got to remember, if you carry, that unfortunately you may be called upon or may have to actually act, and you may have to actually take someone else's life. That's something that you need to be very cognizant of, because it can happen. And I tell you that those things do happen, and the psychological part of it is, unfortunately, if it does happen, that you better get some help. You better seek the treatment to help you get through that, because it is a very difficult thing. Law enforcement in general is jailers, telecommunicators, all of them. We actually have mental health days for our officers and our staff now to help them cope with the horrific things that they have to deal with as law enforcement officers and jailers and telecommunicators, because they are actually the very first ones that confront these people at the worst times of their life, and sometimes in the most horrific incidents, be it a traffic accident or something that occurred at their home. So I want you to know that it is not an easy job. It wears on people, but without the help and without the trust and without the belief, you will not survive in this environment. So I'm all for train the trainers, train the people, get the best of the best, and if you have the best of the best, then you don't have to worry about it. Things will just fall in place naturally. Thank you.
All right, thank you all, gentlemen. We appreciate you coming tonight. And might I remind you, early voting does start next week, and the election is on May 28th. So please get to the polls, and don't forget to do your research on the school board election as well. Thank you, and we'll see you next month back at St. Joseph's Hall.